Are you ready for more independence as a financial advisor? Consider the RIA model. Schwab Advisor Services has helped thousands of advisors make the move. To find your path, start with Schwab at advisorservices.schwab.com/paths today.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com. The USA Today NFL Wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals. Recording later in the week. It's a Thursday afternoon with my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And it is episode 639. It is Super Bowl weekend, and we have a touch of Cardinals things to talk about. Something we learned about an injury from 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, that comes out now. A ridiculous mock draft. And most mock drafts are reasonable. This one is just stupid. And we're going to give you our Super Bowl picks, predictions, and props. Seth, how has the week been, man?
Busy, man. Just enjoying everything, kind of getting ready for the Super Bowl and to be done with the NFL season. Not that I don't love the regular season, but this time of year makes it always like interesting because it's just such a drag to get to the off season and then obviously the draft. And so, this time of the year just seems to drag on when your team's obviously not involved. And so yes, that's where we're at right now. Like, I'm excited for the game, but I'm also excited for everything to be over so we can start to have the conversations, man. Cause I feel like there's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about this year.
There should be. Yeah. And with the Cardinals not in a coaching cycle, nothing's really happening with the roster. They've lost some assistants. That's literally the only news that there's been is, some assistants are gone. But
it's wild how quickly they moved on, like in a positive way. Like,
yeah,
it's just it's
like they're prepared.
Right.
It's like they're prepared. The only position that I haven't seen anything on is to replace Spencer Whipple as passing game specialist. We'll have to see how that goes. I mean, it is possible that they just give that title to someone else, and we'll see what happens. But I think they normally will announce coaching moves sometime later this month. I'm not sure. But what I wanted to talk about, Seth, first is, and normally mock drafts, we do enough draft talk. Most mock drafts are semi-reasonable. They have some sort of rhyme or reason to them. But there was one, and it's a guy that you respect the heck out of over at ESPN now, Matt Miller for ESPN. He released a 2-round mock draft, and it was the most absurd mock for the Cardinals. I don't care about I don't care about the stuff for the other teams. Like the things that went around to the top of the board make sense. Tennessee Titans going with Abdul Carter. There seems that that seems to be a feeling that could go. The Browns pass on a quarterback, but take Travis Hunter. You got the quarterbacks. You've got kind of the expected players that Seth, you and I will discuss over many, many weeks and on all the mock drafts that'll be coming up and all the mock drafts that you and I do over the next several weeks and couple of months. They'll be there. But he has the Cardinals going in the first round, pick number 16, Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas, which in and of itself is like, okay, because I believe Daniel Jeremiah had Barron as, I think, the number 9 player overall. So, like, if you're talking about value at any team could go with cornerback, right? You can never have enough guys who can cover. So, like, that one, I mean, would I think that they would take a cornerback in round 1 after they selected 3 cornerbacks last year? They selected Max Melton the year before in the second round. They had Garrett Williams. So they had 2 guys last year, Garrett Williams the year before that, and then they gave a 3-year lucrative-ish deal to Sean Murphy-Bunting. On the surface, Seth, that doesn't seem like an unreasonable pick, does it?
No, but it's what you and I talked about, and I don't remember the episode off the top of my head, but we discussed the PFF dropped one free agent every team should bring in, and they said DJ Reed.
DJ Reed. Yeah, that's weird. I'm like, why?
Fantastic corner out of New York with the Jets. Instantly becomes a great player on your team. That being said, we talked about like the allocation of money and things like that. Like, it doesn't make sense in that way. That kind of goes for this too, right? Like, Barron is an excellent piece. I think the first thing you have to look at overall is you say, hey, this is a guy that replaces Jalen Thompson. So Jalen Thompson has to go. I know they have Rabbit, but Rabbit could be more of a true free, and then you can use Barron as the Swiss Army knife, right? So you have 2 guys in Buda Baker and Jahdae Barron who just are able to play kind of anywhere on the defense and do it at a high level. But again, when you look at needs and team building, is that the best usage of assets? And I think that's a fair question. So it's not a question of Barron's ability by any means. We both think incredibly highly of the prospect and what he can be. It just feels like from a team building standpoint that you're passing on a plethora of guys that could help up front along the offensive and defensive line. But
for example, you could even, if like immediately after Shamar Stewart, edge Texas A&M, he showed out at the Senior Bowl. You got some question. Like, he's really big. He's kind of built like Darius Robinson, but looked good off the edge, only just not with numbers. You've also got Jihad Campbell, an off-ball backer out of Alabama, who Mel Kiper absolutely raves about, and the Cardinals kind of need that one. We'd be going back to the Steve Keim era. You also could go, as going down the line, you've got Walter Nolan, Ole Miss. You've got Tyler Booker, a guard out of Alabama, a kind of a clear position of need. And on top of that, what Miller says about Barron is that, he would play him on the inside. But wait a minute, that's Garrett Williams. And you know what the Cardinals don't have a problem with right now? They have no issue with their slot cornerback. Unless they view, because Garrett Williams can play outside. Garrett Williams can play safety. It's just, it would be an interesting pick, and in terms of value, sure.
It'd be a lot of talent that is duplicate, right?
Yes.
Like, and so it's not bad in the sense of like, oh my gosh, this player stinks. It's just interesting in how that would fit with what they already have. So they do that in the first round, and you're like, okay, well, they do that in the first round. You've got just a plethora of needs and options in round 2 that like now you can address, right?
Yes, Jess? which takes us to round 2. Cornerback round 1. Okay. I I don't love it, but if he is high enough on your board, you'd never turn down a potential star cornerback, right? But what you don't do is you double up at a position where you don't have a real need. And Miller has them at round 2 at number 47, doubling up at cornerback. So I guess it's not the Barron pick that makes me insanely, it makes me angry as a Cardinals analyst and Cardinals fan, because it's kind of ignoring the Cardinals roster completely. Miller has them going with another cornerback, Siobhan Rivell at East Carolina, but that's not even the problem. So not only is he taking cornerbacks in round 1 and round 2, Revell is coming off of a torn ACL. So not only are you taking, like, you're using your 2 premium picks on a position where you already feel at least okay.
Decent. Yeah.
And then you are just adding 2 more cornerbacks to the room, and one who won't be ready to play the season likely, because, but at least the way that the Cardinals go about college injuries, because, you know, Garrett Williams they drafted him in the round 3. Round 3, he had an ACL tear in October. He was supposed to be ready at training camp. They slow rolled him and didn't bring him back until midseason. And that was So this is where I'm like, this was for me an irresponsible mock draft, because if you're saying, because one, you don't understand the Cardinals' needs if you think cornerback is one of their major needs to then double up at. Like, if you're going to double up at a position, you could double up at edge. You could double up on the offensive line. You could even double up on the defensive line. You absolutely cannot double up a cornerback.
Well, and the interesting thing is, so let's say they go Barron at 16, you know, not something we love, but not something that we would hate. Extremely talented player. You feel good about it. At 47, you sit there and you look and you go, TJ Sanders. We talked about him the other day. Excellent defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Had a really nice Senior Bowl. Looks the part. You know, fits a need immediately, right? Like something that they need. Right after that,
yeah. You've got 3 edge guys that you could go, okay. Nick Scourton, who's even mocked them in the first round sometimes. Ole Miss's Princely Unamilian. And then you've got JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State that go like 3 out of the next 6 picks, and you're like, any of those guys would make sense,
right?
And then you wouldn't think that this is a dumb mock draft. But when you go cornerback round 1 and injured cornerback round 2, when the Cardinals do not have a clear need at cornerback, what in the world are you doing, Matt Miller? Sorry, I respect the heck out of you, but I greatly dislike this mock draft.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was something where he felt the need that he had to get him in the first round, right? Like he had to end up getting one of those guys in the first round, and it just, or not one of those guys in his draft. And so it was like, instead of really focusing on what the Cardinals would need, he focused on like, hey, let's get 2 guys that I have
where he should be slotted, I guess.
Right. And so that's the hard part, is like, it's basically, it would basically be like, and I'm not saying this is what happened, because I know for a fact this isn't what happened, but it'd basically be like if you went into the mock draft simulator and you just picked the Cardinals and you just said, okay, we'll just pick whatever the highest ranked player is that comes up next.
Yes.
And
we're going by our board.
Right.
And you literally take the top of the board and end up. Well, I also saw, I think it was a Pro Football Network one, where the 5 picks were 3 guards and 2 receivers.
Perfect. Exactly what they need.
So, I mean, yeah. They are losing all their guards. And they could use a receiver, but like 3 guards, sure thing. Yeah.
So it's always interesting to be a Cardinals fan in these scenarios, because it does, unfortunately, and again, I know Matt, he's always been extremely kind to me, always been extremely, thorough with me when I do have a chance to chat with him. This just comes across as almost aloof, right? Like almost like, it's the Cardinals. Who cares?
It's the Cardinals. Who cares? And this is not an indictment on Matt. This is an indictment on this particular mock draft. We're going, what in the world? And if the Cardinals did this,
yeah, we wouldn't know. Like, what in the world are you doing?
And we would be saying Monty Austin for. We're like, Monty, what would that kind of be like? How Steve Keim, the luster started coming off of him after the first couple of years. And you're like, what is happening? So yeah, hopefully we don't have to do that with too many mock drafts this offseason. Coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, the Mr. Cardinals talk on the web. We're going to go back in time a little bit to some happier times. Only it's some new information that makes it a little more frustrating. That's coming up next on Rise of Sea Red.
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today. O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly. Save on your next oil change at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Choose Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil to provide maximum performance and protection for your engine. Get a $15 gift card after rebate when you buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge for $34.95. Plus 2 times O Rewards points. Offer valid in-store and online at O'ReillyAuto.com. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
We're back on the Rise of Secret podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web. 2015, right? Carson Palmer, the meltdown and all the turnovers against the Carolina Panthers in the NFC Championship game. You know what? I didn't think I'd ever have to think of this season again, other than, wow, that was a pretty good season that ended. That was really sucky. Patrick Peterson, and this is Super Bowl week, so down in New Orleans, you've got basically all the media and all the players and all the former players milling around Radio Row, talking about the NFL and stuff. You've got people vendors selling things, products that players are hawking. Patrick Peterson was a guest on one of our local companion shows. PHNX, guys that we know quite well, Bo Brock and Johnny Venerable. And Pat revealed something, and they were talking about like what happened. They asked what happened in 2015, the year they went 13-3. They were so good. And Patrick revealed something that we didn't know. We do know what happened down the stretch. Ty Matthew tore his ACL for the second time in his career in the Week 15 game when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles and locked up the NFC West. Carson Palmer in that same game banged his finger on a helmet, and he had a dislocated finger that affected him a bit in the Packers game the next week and bothered him against the Seahawks in the season finale. And so we knew that. And if correct me if I'm wrong, everything we were ever told back in 2015 and then during the playoffs was simply that Palmer dislocated his finger, right?
Yeah, that's all we have ever really heard about the situation.
This is what Pat said. Now, obviously, losing Ty was huge. He was having such a great season. The Cardinals didn't have many defensive backs on the roster to begin with, so they could ill afford to lose him anyway. Pat said, and this is something I'd never heard, and then he said that Carson Palmer tore ligaments in his finger in the divisional round game. Now, so if we're going to take that at face value, that he is getting all the details right about something that's, over 9 years ago. Palmer injures his finger against Philadelphia, is aggravated by it for the next couple of weeks. They get the first round bye in the divisional round where he doesn't look good until kind of like the second half. And Aaron Rodgers has his 2 Hail Marys, and then the overtime pass. Carson throws the ball to Larry Fitzgerald, and then they have the other one, but to Larry Fitzgerald where they score the touchdown. That apparently he went from having a injured finger to torn ligaments in his finger. And then, of course, what followed up that week, it was the 49-15 absolute beatdown to the Carolina Panthers. And he was, picked off 4 times and fumbled once. And it was a disaster. It was a terrible ending to a very good season, although they were good enough to win a championship. We know that. We know that they were good enough to win a championship based on the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos that year. Carolina went to the Super Bowl and got absolutely demolished by that Denver Broncos defense. And so that wouldn't have guaranteed, had Palmer and Matthew stayed healthy, there would be no guarantee they would have even won the NFC Championship game, or that had they gone to the Super, that they would have beat the Broncos, because those were clearly, aside from the Cardinals, like the Cardinals were one of the 3 best teams in football, and those 3 teams were all really good. But does that make you look back at that Carolina game any differently if Palmer's playing with torn ligaments in his finger?
Not really. I mean, we know that guys try to play through things all the time. It's unfortunate, and it's one of those situations. And I've said it with everybody. If you're on the field, you can't in hindsight go, well, I was injured. Well, then why were you playing? That's always been my response to that. Like, if you're so injured that you can't go, or that it's affecting your game to that extent with how bad he was in those games, then you're putting your team at a detriment to begin with. So, are you, what are you doing in that instance? And remember, that was the season that we did see positive things from Drew Stanton, right? Like,
yes.
So I don't know. It's just, I feel like I've always liked Patrick's willingness to be engaging. I feel like at sometimes he loves to tell tall tales.
I wondered that maybe the timeline is off. So maybe the dislocation was a ligament issue, and that he re-aggravated something, because they did play the Packers in week 16. Right. That maybe that was where it happened, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like an ACL tear, because it was just a ligament in the finger, and so it wasn't anything they could do anything about anyway. So I worried about, at face value, that, I mean, and even if he played through that, you know why he would have wanted to play through that? What had he just done the previous year? Right. He had just gone through, he had missed the second half of the season and a potential playoff run because of an ACL tear. He was absolutely not going to miss the playoffs again because of an injury, especially where he was at in his career. But it does explain, if the timeline fits, and he did tear ligaments in his finger in the divisional round against Green Bay, followed up by how bad things went against Carolina, you're like, oh, okay, that would explain slightly how bad Carson looked, because Carson had such a Palmer had such a fantastic season that year, and it was one of the worst just sequence of events that they had. The first couple of turnovers, then you had the muffed punt by Patrick, and then you had and then it turned into desperation. Like, you turn the ball over a couple of times and you're down a couple of touchdowns, and then you start having to take risks, and then you end up making more mistakes. And that was exactly what happened with Palmer. I wish we could have finished that season with a healthy Matthew and a healthy Palmer to at least see whether they could have beaten the Panthers.
Yeah.
At least competed because
they were so overmatched in that game.
And you remember watching All or Nothing afterwards, because that was the first year that James Betcher was defensive coordinator, and on the sideline, some of the footage, you're like, oh my gosh, he is overwhelmed by how badly this is going. He didn't know what to do. It was that bad. You're like, that's not a good look.
Well, and that's, unfortunately, the reality too sometimes is that there are situations where it's a bad look and you're like, oh, this is not what we were hoping for right now.
Yeah. All right. This is Super Bowl weekend. Let's do this next. Coming up next on the Rise Is Here podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's move on and talk about the Super Bowl. What do we think's going to happen? What are some props? Because we know that there's a million props that you can make for this game. The sports books will take all of your money. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red.
Right now, get up to a $15 gift card after rebate when you purchase select Superstart batteries exclusively at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
We're back on the Rise Is Here podcast, the best of our Cardinals talk on the web. 4:30 p.m. Arizona time on Fox. 6:30 Eastern is Super Bowl 59, and we get the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. You all listeners know very well I will not root for the Eagles. I still feel no goodness in my heart towards that team, dating back to the NFC East days. When it comes to the NFC East, the Cowboys I dislike, although I did have a soft spot in my heart for many years for Tony Romo, one of my favorite individual players, but there isn't anything about the Eagles as a franchise, and you know what it is as well? It's the fan base. That is such an unlikable,
unbearable.
Oh my gosh!
I was actually talking to somebody today who actively dislikes the Chiefs, and he's like, "I'm actually just rooting for the Chiefs specifically because I just don't want to see that fan base from Philadelphia win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't want to see them happy." Like, I wouldn't go that far for me. Like, I prefer the Chiefs to win. We've talked about it. Like, the
Mahomes,
idea
we both love Mahomes. Like, Andy Reid's such a great coach. I want to see history. Patrick Mahomes is
history. And it does also have a side thing too, Jess, that, is kind of fun. Probably the second most obnoxious group of fans are just Boston fans in general. And so for their dynasty to start to be overshadowed immediately by another dynasty who is able to complete a three-peat and able to, have that greatness all around them immediately after, nobody will ever match the Patriots dynasty, right? Nobody. And they do it in just immediate style. Like you just go, oh, good. Like, because that's the thing is it's not so much that we're rooting for anyone, although I would say you and I are probably.
I like Andy Reid. I'm a big Mahomes fan. If the Cardinals can't win the Super Bowl, I am 100% okay with Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl. Like, you look, the type of guy, the type of teammate, the type of player he is. Like, sure, he might do, like, you might dislike how he flops or tries to use the rules to his advantage to slide late, get touched, or dance on the sideway and then go out of bounds just before a guy tries to level him. Aside from that, he's such a likable, engaging guy. I loved Peyton Manning. There was little to dislike about him. And the Chiefs, like, Chiefs fans, have you ever met annoying Chiefs fans? The only thing annoying about Chiefs fans are the Taylor Swift fans who love the Chiefs but know nothing about the Chiefs. And it's not that annoying. It's just funny because they're like, Taylor Swift, our mother, is rooting for the Chiefs. We root for the Chiefs too. It's just this herd and this just sort of swarm mentality.
And it's interesting because I have some really good buddies that are Chiefs fans. Obviously, Sully, who comes on the Draft podcast every year, is a diehard Chiefs guy. And so, like, it is, I get along with the Chiefs guys really well and always have, and they were mostly long suffering like us.
Yes.
So it's always fun to see that can happen for franchises. You just have to have the right combination in that in those roles, and hopefully that'll be the Cardinals soon. But yeah, I mean, this is an interesting matchup. I mean, we've got the Eagles who, all of a sudden, and again, this is why people struggle with the Eagles and their fans. We're hearing like, best pass rush of all time, that, Victor Fangio, and it's like this defense isn't even as good as the one they had.
No, Josh Sweat, like that number one target for the Cardinals, he hasn't had a sack since the middle of December.
So, it's just an interesting game. The Chiefs only at 1.5 points. The over under 48.5. That's where I'm like, I can't decide if I think this is a repeat of the last Super Bowl in terms of offensive explosion, or if how the Chiefs have won this year and how good their defense has been is a sign of things to come. But I feel like the game against the Bills last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess technically, is the blueprint of what we're looking for. But there's some really interesting stats coming into this one. And the first one would be, I think you and I covered it fairly well. The Bills made some very egregious errors not continuing with James Cook in that game. I know they got down a little bit, and so they felt this like necessity to continue to try to throw the ball and let Josh Allen, who's clearly their best player, to get them back into the game. But at the same point, James Cook had 85 yards on 13 carries. He had another 49 yards receiving on 3 receptions. He was, no pun intended, cooking, right? Like, he was playing extremely well. There's this stat that's going around that the Chiefs have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in their last 18 playoff games, which is accurate. So I don't want to take anything away from the number, but it's also kind of misleading, right? Like, it's not like they slowed James Cook down at all.
Yeah.
It's just that the Bills were too arrogant. I don't know what the wording or verbiage is, but they made a calculated error, not focusing their game plan or continuing their game plan, getting the ball in James Cook's hand. And as good as James Cook is, he is not Saquon Barkley. So, but
right.
Like, how does that work out? Like, what gives 18 playoff games in a row, Jess, to not allow a 100-yard rusher is absurd. It
is, which it borders on the 14 straight games that Travis Kelce had over 70 yards, only to then have that come to a grinding halt with only 2 catches and 19 yards in the AFC title game. And you're like, and we're like, yeah, bet Travis Kelce. Nope. Sorry, guys.
Well, I mean, again, all these things come to a halt for a reason, right? Like, eventually. The other number that's really interesting, every Super Bowl winner has forced at least 3 turnovers in the playoffs. The Chiefs have not forced a turnover all playoff.
Oh.
Now, it's only 2 games.
They could do it in the Super Bowl. So,
but even if they force 2, and like you said, they could force 3. But even if they force 2, like, they're not going to hit that number. So it's interesting because you look at these numbers and you go, if there's one team and one guy that can overcome all that, it's Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah, of course it is. And that's the thing. I think this is the 100% the best Super Bowl matchup we could have had based on yes, 100%. Because you have a dynamic offense in Philadelphia who has a top defense, and aside from Patrick Mahomes, or you can even argue that Saquon Barkley was the best player in the NFL this season. And so you've got the best player season in the NFL with a team that is improved against this Chiefs team that just for some reason doesn't lose. They've won games, but all different ways because they are both teams are top 4 defenses in points allowed, but offensively, the first time that they scored over 30 points in a game this year was the net AFC title game. They were middle of the road, 22.6 points per game, 15th in the NFL this season. They were +6 in turnover ratio compared to Philadelphia's +11. They are number 8 against the run. The Eagles are number 1 against the pass. And the Eagles have the number 2 rushing offense in the NFL in the top. And so there's just so many perfect matchups for this game. And it's come down to who's going to come down. And I understand why the Chiefs are favored because they just keep doing it. And in fairness, I 100% am predicting the Chiefs will win again because we are at that point in Mahomes' career. Why would you ever bet against him? Because it's not one of those things that people have to show that it's going to happen. And so I'm not going to bet against him. Would the Eagles, am I 100% convicted that the Chiefs will win? No. I'm kind of like if just on paper, 55%, 45%, 55% Chiefs. But in terms of what I'm going to pick, easily, it's going to be the Chiefs. And I think this is going to be one of those exciting games. It'll be a high-scoring one. I've got this one 31-27.
Yeah, and so that's what you kind of have to decide, right? Is this going to be a grinded out game? I think one thing we need to understand is that there's going to be a lot of people on the over on this one because of both teams kind of exploding. Obviously,
75% of the handle on BetMGM is on the over 48.5.
And that's not surprising. I mean, the Eagles beat that by themselves last game. So people,
yes.
Again, I love that new line. The recency bias thing is so true, right? The Eagles just scored 50 plus. So that's the first thing. The second thing is big game Pat's for real. I mean, there's no other way around it. He's the best quarterback of this generation. Everything he does is just insane. And he's already won 3 Super Bowls. Think about that. He's won 3 Super Bowls. He's not even 30. If he wins a Super Bowl this year, he'll have 4 Super Bowls before the age 30. It's just nutty to even think about. So this is a game that I'm with you. I think the Chiefs, until it wouldn't be shocking. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, they lost. But I'm not, we're in Tom Brady territory where you're just not going to pick against the guy. Right. And so I was going to go on this one, 34-31.
Ooh,
fun.
I
don't love the over. I don't love anything about it, but I'm hopeful that it's a game similar to last year, similar to last week in terms of the Bills and Chiefs, and we get a good one that ends up being worth the money, so to speak, because at the end of the day, when you're not a fan, that's all you kind of root for, right? Is that the game doesn't suck.
Yes, that 100%. So let's look at some of the game props. And
the first one I love, and I don't know if you on BetMGM have alternate odds on this, but the first one I love, and the odds aren't great right now, is Xavier Worthy over 5.5 yards rushing. It's -122. If they don't have any of his alt lines, so a lot of FanDuel will do 25 plus, 40 plus. If you can get 25 plus for good money, I would absolutely do it. Like, there's no guarantee that it hits. Obviously, I love the over 5.5, but I would love to get him at 20 plus or 25 plus as well, just to see if they can break one, because that's all it would take is one for them, right?
Yes. No, on BetMGM, you've only got on the 25 plus Kareem Hunt, Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco. Very interesting how Kareem Hunt has been the hot hand. And so I'm like, would they suddenly change gears? And I don't think so. So I think that 43.5 for Kareem Hunt is an easy one. I think that's a real easy one to do. And then another easy ladder, because you get 50 plus at plus 110, because the run game has been through Hunt. So I think that is an easy bet and ladder. I'm not gonna ladder it all the way. I mean, you could do the 3 over to 75 plus at plus 340, but I think a really safe and profitable one is to take the over 43.5 at minus 110, and then 50 plus for plus 110. Seems like almost a layup.
The only thing I would add to that is ladder up one more, and go to plus 70 plus yards from scrimmage, so alt rushing, receiving. I don't know if they offer that on BetMGM, but they do on FanDuel, and it's plus 185. So he had 64 and 6 last game. So again,
BetMGM, you have to go in 25. So the next one up, you have to go 75 plus for plus 200. So
yeah, I don't love that. I would take the plus 70. 70 plus if you can on FanDuel, plus 185. It's a good number. I like that. You can also get, if you like Hunt at 50, like you said, you can go 10 plus increments on FanDuel. So at 50 you get plus 115, 60 you get plus 195. So again, I'm with Jess. The only thing that worries me is Andy Reid has a reputation, right?
He's changed it up. This is a Pacheco game.
Yeah, right. Like, and it'll be out of the blue. Like Hunt will start, get 5 carries for 12 yards, and then Pacheco will break 1 for 15. And he's like, well, this is a Pacheco game. And you're like, no. So here's what I would say. If you are doing that, don't include Hunt like plus money in any of your parlays. Or be like, not, or I shouldn't say it that way, in all of your parlays. Like, vary it up. Like, so if you're gonna go, Travis Kelce 5 plus catches, and Dallas Goedert 5 plus catches, and Xavier Worthy, over 5.5 yards rushing, and then Kareem Hunt over 43.5. Don't, on your next one, put Kareem Hunt in there as well, because that's what'll burn you more than anything. Is you're like, oh, that's the safe one, and then all of a sudden it's not safe, right? And you're like yeah. every one lost because I had Kareem Hunt in all of them.
That would be so bad.
What do you like passing wise in this game? Because there's one that's like really sticking out to me, and that's Jalen Hurts passing touchdowns. I know the TD score props for him make this like not the best, right? Because he's minus 115 to score anytime touchdown, and then he's plus 550 to score 2, which is just terrible odds. But he's plus 176, to throw 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
Again, if we're talking a high scoring game, doesn't it seem, I don't want to say like a lock, but doesn't it seem like a good shot that he will throw 2 touchdowns?
I think so. And let me go back. Let's take a look at Jalen Hurts in the playoffs. Just want to kind of get, okay, so he did only have the 1 touchdown pass in the Super Bowl loss, but then rushed for 3. But yeah, I like it. I like that simply because if we believe it's going to be a high scoring game, so multiple touchdowns, that allows that allows for, okay, Saquon's going to score, yet Hurts is going to score once on the ground, and he can throw a couple of touchdowns as well, and you still get plus money. It's plus 155 for over 1.5 touchdown passes for Hurts, which means FanDuel is the much better option for that. But here's the other one at the same time that I also like. Jalen Hurts over 1.5 touchdown passes, but also over half an interception at plus 120.
Yeah, I like that as well. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, because I'm not, I don't think he's played overtly well as a passer. I think he played well enough last week, but he does a good job of kind of keeping things calm. So if they were to have to play from behind, and if Saquon's not getting the bulk of the touches, how does that look, right? And how does Hurts react in that way? So yeah, I like that as well.
A sneaky one, because he's basically been relegated to not much, but DeAndre Hopkins, you can get plus 105 for over 1.5 receptions. And in a game like this, someone as reliable with his hands as Hopkins, I can see that being an easy. You can also get his over under for yards is only 11.5. So like you could even do the single bet on both, or even parlay the two together to make that go. If you can parlay, let me see if it'll even let you. And and that would give you a nice easy plus 115 to have at least two catches for 12 yards. Easy. I think that's just a really easy, but not a big money maker, but it is like, if you're going to nickel and dime your way through things, I think it's a fairly sure thing.
Yeah. And I like that one. You look at Hops receptions, plus 350 for 3, plus 800 for 4 on FanDuel.
Ooh.
Like if you think he's going to be a guy they target, the other one, Marquise Hollywood Brown, plus 5 plus receptions, plus 178. If they're going to try to get him involved in the quick game, there's some really intriguing options on this one. It's one of those games where I like to put a lot out there, knowing that, one good one can pay for the night. Last year, my big one, and I hit about 4 good ones, but my big one last year was Juwan Jennings and Marquez Valdez-Scantling anytime touchdown scorers parlayed, and it was a plus 4,400. So you do it the right way. Even if you bet, like you said, you throw 20 bets out at $10 a piece, you hit one that plus 400 and you're plus 240 or whatever on the day, type of thing. So that's how I like to do it. The other ones that are intriguing to me, but like not something I would go big on. I was surprised that Mahomes 2+ touchdowns is plus 4,600 after he scored 2 last week.
That's true.
Obviously it's unlikely to happen, but again, something small on that wouldn't be absurd. Anytime touchdown, that's where things can get fun with our guy Andy Reid there, right? So one of the ones I would throw in is like Justin Watson's plus 1,300, Jahan Dotson for the Eagles plus 9,000 or plus 1,700. And then I would throw both of those guys on there as first touchdown scores. Why not? Plus 7,000 for Watson, plus 9,000. Like, again, those ones, that's where you bet like $1, right? But I mean, if you have more than that and you're comfortable with it, feel free. But it's where you don't want to be overly aggressive, so to speak.
If MVP, you know that Patrick Mahomes and Saquon Barkley are going to be the prohibitive favorites, and even Jalen Hurts as well. You know who I kind of like as a potential, like, just massive payout for MVP, which would be George Karlaftis at plus 10,000, because he had a 3-sack game this postseason against Houston. If they win and he has 2 sacks or 3 sacks, that you could see that happen, and that the incredible plus 10,000 odds is a big moneymaker.
Yeah, and I'm trying to see if they have this in FanDuel. I would assume they do, but I cannot find it anywhere. Quick bets, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. The other one, what's Chris Jones? Because I cannot find
plus 6,600.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Also a good one.
Yeah. And then what's Jalen Carter?
It's the same, plus 6,600.
Yeah, I think those are all good ones that could be, potential. Makes sense. There's a couple interesting ones that I wanted to throw out on FanDuel that they normally don't have, and I'll run through this real quick. So, and these are like super long shots, but I think they're fun. Player to record an octopus. So,
what is that?
To score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion on the same drive.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
But it has to be the
same.
same.
Like, I'd never even heard of that. So.
Yeah, so it has to be the same drive. So obviously Barkley and Hurts numbers are not great. Plus 2,000, which is still good, don't get me wrong, but it's such a long shot to happen. They're not great numbers. The one that I like, though, that's interesting to me is Kareem Hunt. He's plus 12,000.
Ooh.
So, like, that's an interesting one to think about. Hunt's plus 12,000, Kelsey's plus 10,000. Again, both of those, just, if you throw $1 on and that hits, that's $100 win on the day, right? So not a bad day at the office, just to have some fun and win a little bit of money. The other one that I just had, now I got to find it again. Where did it go? They had the Triple Crown. That's the one I was looking for. So Triple Crown, leading passer, leading rusher, leading receiver. And they have some interesting odds on these. The one that I like that could potentially be interesting with how Patrick's played this year is, what if you went Jalen Hurts leading passer and then Kelsey and kind of chalk on the other two, Kelsey leading receiver, Barkley leading rusher at plus 3,100?
Ooh.
Because, like, that's what I was thinking, like, obviously the Mahomes, Brown, Barkley, and the Mahomes, Kelsey, Barkley are like plus 600-ish. But yeah, what if you went Hurts and then Kelsey and Barkley, and you get plus 3,100 odds on those? Those aren't terrible, and you could potentially see that a little better there.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap this up? Because I know you got to get out of here for your evening.
No, just excited to see how this all plays out. I think this is going to be a fun one, man. I think you and I are both excited to see what happens and where this goes. But overall, like you said, I think this was the best matchup we could get after the Lions injuries kind of beset them.
Yep. And with that, we will wrap up episode 639 on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, episode of Cardinals Talk on the Web. We'll be back again next week to talk about the Super Bowl, and we will have more off-season Cardinals content. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, Sea Red, and of course, rise up, Sea Red.